All right, we'll go to the first question coming from the live chat. This is from Mike Grigus, who says in Acts 25:20, if Festus / Agrippa can't be sure of the resurrection claim, how can we be sure now? Thanks for your ministry. Hey, Mike. All right, so Acts 25, 25:20. We're going to go there, put it on the screen for you guys to look at, and let's think through this. So I'm going to actually back up a little bit. Actually, I'll read a verse by itself, and then we'll back up and look at the context, because I just want to use this as an example, maybe, of how a verse out of context can look different than when you read it in context. So, being at a loss how to investigate these questions, I asked whether he wanted to go to Jerusalem and be tried there regarding them. So this is where we have the Roman leader saying, hey, I don't know how to investigate these things. And you're interpreting this, Mike, as he doesn't know how to investigate the claims of Jesus' resurrection. That's interesting. He doesn't know how to investigate the claims of Jesus' resurrection. Let's back up a little bit and read it in more context. So I'll start in verse 13 here. It seems like a section. Now, when some days had passed, Agrippa, the king, and Bernice arrived at Caesarea and greeted Festus. Now, these are two different leaders in the community, political leaders. And as they stayed there many days, Festus laid Paul's case before the king, before Agrippa. There is a man left prisoner by Felix. Now, Paul, just so you guys know, Paul is an apostle. He's in prison. He's been accused of things, but they can't quite prove the case against him. It's more that there's just a lot of loud, noisy people who are accusing him of things without evidence. And so he ends up in prison more through pressure, and he ends up appealing to Caesar because he's going to go to a higher court where this can be decided further distance from the Jewish influence so that he can be shown to be innocent. And as they stayed there many days, Festus laid Paul's case before the king, saying, there's a man left prisoner by Felix. And when I was at Jerusalem, the chief priests and elders of the Jews laid out their case against him, asking for a sentence of condemnation against him. I answered them that it was not the custom of the Romans to give up anyone before the accused met the accusers face to face and had opportunity to make his defense concerning the charge laid against him. So they made accusations, but there hasn't really been proof. There hasn't really been a trial, right? Verse 17, so when they came together here, I made no delay, but on the next day took my seat on the tribunal and ordered the man to be brought. When the accusers stood up, they brought no charge in his case of such evils as I supposed. So they had made noise to sound like Paul had broken laws that Romans would care about. But instead, verse 19, they had certain points of dispute with him about their own religion and about a certain Jesus who is dead, but whom Paul asserted to be alive. Being at a loss how to investigate these questions, I asked whether he wanted to go to Jerusalem and be tried there. And instead, he wants to go to Caesar and be tried there because he doesn't want just the religious court. So what does it mean that he's like, hey, Festus here is like, hey, I don't know how to investigate these things. Is he saying that he had no access to the ability to investigate the resurrection claims of Jesus? Or is he at a loss as to how to arbitrate? Here's what I think it is: how to arbitrate a dispute on religious matters between Jews when he doesn't care about that because Roman law doesn't care about these religious issues between Jews. I think that's the real issue here. He's not claiming I can't investigate the resurrection. Whether he thought Jesus resurrected or not, he, in his court with his laws, he's at a loss as to how to proceed with accusations that aren't a violation of Roman law. That's what he's at a loss as to how to investigate. That's the thing. Now, if he was to try to investigate the resurrection of Jesus, he would have the ability to do so. He could bring in eyewitnesses, have them subject to cross-examination. So there would actually be quite a lot of, oh, I forgot the question counter. Sorry, Sarah. It's too late. It's unplugged on the ground. Sorry about that. So do you get what I'm saying here is that this is actually not him saying, I can't investigate the resurrection. It's him saying, as a court, I don't know how to investigate or proceed with questions about Jewish religious issues. That, like, it's just, there's no real way to proceed. So I think that is the application. So Festus did have the ability to investigate the resurrection claims. He had a witness there, Paul himself. He could examine him. He could see his claims. He could have asserted, hey, let's bring in other witnesses and have them talk about their claims. Let's look at the suffering that these apostles endure after they make this claim about the resurrection. We could talk to eyewitnesses who say that they were fleeing in fear. So they went from terror and fear, they were not willing to die with Jesus, to being willing to die for the claim that he rose from the dead. That's a pretty actually important piece of evidence. We could also talk to Joseph of Arimathea at the time. He'd be able to say, hey, Joseph, did you really bury him in your tomb? Hey, women, did you really find Jesus' tomb empty? Hey, Paul, you hated Christianity. You persecuted Christians. You wanted them to die, right? That was long after they were telling you Jesus rose. You didn't believe. You thought it was a horrible lie. But then you became Christian. What happened that made you become Christian? Now, you could claim one of these as someone being delusional, but when you add all of them together, and then you talk about group appearances and individual appearances, this is strong evidence, unless you just want to disregard all sort of eyewitness evidence because it's about a claim that you think is unbelievable, but you don't do that with anything else in life. So it seems like that would become special pleading.